Today we are going to make bread with no flour, none. I know how hard it is to get flour at the store right now, and so I wanted to try making a bread that didn't require flour, and I've done it. Is it perfect? No. Is it fluffy and soft like the Amish white bread or the buttermilk bread from Russell's Chipotle? No. But it is delicious, it is filling, it makes fabulous toast, and you can make a sandwich out of it. You just need to make two to get the same size sandwich you would if you made it from regular bread. So come with me and let's learn how to do it. Hey y'all, so I'm over here at the counter, and what I'm gonna do first is to grind up some oatmeal. And I'm using old-fashioned oats, but you can use whatever you happen to have. I'm going to need almost 3 cups. So I'm gonna go ahead and use 3 cups in the blender just to make sure. I think it's gonna be a little less when it's ground up, but we'll see. Okay, I've ground the oats in the blender to a fine powder. It looks a lot like flour. It's a little coarser, but for the most part, it looks like flour. So we're gonna get the blender out of the way and go on with the recipe. All right, I've got my oat flour in here that I ground up, and I'm going to put 2 3/4 cup in the bowl. So there's 2. The 2 3/4 cup of oat flour, you'll need 4 cups of oats to get that. 3.5 to 4 cups. All right, I've got a little bit left, as you can see. So the next thing that you're going to want to do is add your leavening, which in this case we're going to be using baking soda and baking powder. And make sure that you get the lumps out of the baking soda, because there's nothing worse than biting into a lump of baking soda that didn't get broken up all the way. Now this is a great bread to have when you can't get yeast. Maybe you're having a hard time getting flour. If you can get oatmeal, you can make this. Or if you can even get, you could make this with flaked wheat, any kind of flaked cereal. Like sometimes you can, at health food stores, you can find wheat flakes or rye flakes. And I'm not talking about like the cornflake type cereal. I'm talking about the rolled, sometimes you can find rolled wheat or rolled oats or rolled rye, just different things if you can find it. If you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry about it. All right, so I'm gonna mix up the leavening in there, and I'm going to add a little bit of salt. And I'm gonna add a little bit of sugar, not too much, because I don't want this to be a sweet bread. I want this to be a sandwich bread, but still a little bit of brown sugar or regular sugar or honey is perfect. So we've got that in there. If you're gonna do this as a breakfast bread, you can add some cinnamon too. That's great. The one thing you might not have in your pantry is flaxseed or flaxseed meal. It's going to take about 1/4 cup, which is 4 tablespoons. If you have whole flaxseed, or you can find whole flaxseed, you can grind that up in your blender. If not, try just adding wheat germ or even just adding an extra 1/4 cup of your oatmeal flour. All right, that's all mixed in there, so we're gonna work on our wet ingredients. This doesn't call for any oil or butter. So you don't need to worry about that, but it does call for 2 eggs, which are necessary to help the bread hold together. And you want to beat that up or whisk that up with the milk. And I'm using whole milk, but you can use almond milk or low-fat milk or fat-free milk, or pretty much whatever kind of milk that you happen to have. You can feel free to use that. We're just going to whisk that up. This is a batter bread, and it's a quick bread. This is not a yeast bread, but when we get done, you'll be able to see that it works great for toast or sandwiches or whatever. So if you're having a hard time finding bread, or you're having a hard time finding yeast, or maybe you've been having a hard time finding all-purpose flour, then this is a good go-to. Once I have my wet ingredients done, I'm going to spray a bread pan with non-stick baking release spray. And I'll set my loaf pan aside while I mix up my ingredients. And this is really simple. We've got all of our dry ingredients here, including the sugar. And we have all of our wet ingredients here, which is just milk and eggs. And we're gonna pour this into here and just stir it up. And you're gonna wanna stir this for about 10 seconds, just to make sure that it's all stirred up really well. A little bit more in there. I'm gonna put this in here. My oven is preheated to 350 degrees. Now what you're going to do, once you have it in your pan, you're going to let it sit for 5 minutes. So I'm going to set the timer and I'll be back in 5 minutes. So it's been resting for 5 minutes. We're going to take this, put it in the oven, and bake it for about 45 minutes. Okay, y'all, here it is. It's cooled. It did not rise much because remember, there's no gluten in it. This is just pure oat flour. So it didn't rise much, but it is bread, and we're gonna check it out right now. I expect it to be pretty dense because there's no gluten in it, but let's see what we've got. So the bread is really moist. You're not gonna be able to cut it super thin. You could actually double the batch and fill up the loaf pan more so that you could have a higher rise bread, or use a smaller loaf pan than I did. But it looks pretty good. The main thing is, how does it taste? All right, y'all, we've got the bread, and it's coarse. It's, you know, it's about the texture of banana bread. It's moist and coarse, maybe a little firmer, not quite so cakey. But I've put some butter on some. We have a taste. It's good. It'll make good toast. It'll make good sandwiches, but you'll have to use twice as much because they're small. It'd be great with soup. If you can't find bread, this is a great alternative, okay? Is it something that you're gonna wanna make like on a daily basis? Oh, this is the bread for my family? No, you're gonna wanna stick with the Amish white bread or the buttermilk bread or the batter bread or, you know, the English muffin bread when you're talking about that. But in a situation where you've run out of flour or you can't get flour, if you have old-fashioned oats or oatmeal, then you can grind it up and you can use that as flour and make a pretty decent bread. So I hope this was helpful. I love y'all, and I'll see you next time, okay?